Good afternoon, and thank you all so much for joining us. I want to begin by thanking our Attorney General, Rob Bonta, for coming here to the Visitation Valley community. It's really great to have you here in San Francisco, but especially in this particular community, and thank you for co-hosting this roundtable discussion that was so important to talk about the challenges that exist around hate crimes in this city and in this state, especially as we have seen an uptick in violent hate crimes against so many of our communities in San Francisco and the Bay Area and across the state and nation. In just a few short months on the job, he's already taken action on a number of initiatives related to criminal justice reform and racial justice, which are issues that we all care about deeply in San Francisco. Thanks to the commitment of the community leaders that are joining us here today, so many folks who have been really on the ground addressing these issues for decades. Our police chief, Bill Scott, who is with us as well. We just had a very productive discussion on how we can continue to combat hate crimes by working together. We know that there's no shortcut to this work, and finding the root cause and solutions will require a continuous work in these and continuous conversations of sharing of ideas, not just when something happens, but also proactively when something isn't happening. To address hate crimes at their core, we need buy-in from local community, support from law enforcement, and a commitment from all levels of government. Here in San Francisco, we're steadfast in ensuring that every community is heard and protected. Whether it is work around violence prevention and racial justice, our partners standing with us today have years of experience and have worked tirelessly and collaboratively with one another to combat these issues. Today, as I said, we are in Visitation Valley because we remember when Grandma Huang, as she was brutally attacked almost 2 years just a block away from here at the Visitation Valley playground. Grandma Huang was doing her morning exercise when that tragic incident happened, and sadly, she struggled for a year before passing away earlier this year. None of this should have happened, and we want to send a clear message. An attack on one of us is an attack on all of us. We will continue to stand in solidarity, and here in San Francisco, we will do everything we can to bring perpetrators of crimes of this nature to justice. Leaders here are taking action and banding together and partnering, and we're doing so because we know how important this is. An example of this work can be found in our expansion of the Street Violence Intervention Program with Community Youth Center and self-help for the elderly and members of the Street Violence Intervention Program. And I want to thank Sarah Wang for really taking, aggressive action and working with the community to make sure that people know that we're going to have eyes and ears on the streets, but we're also going to make sure that we support and look out for our seniors. Part of this expansion includes patrolling neighborhoods in the city in response to hate crimes against our Asian community. Another part of the program provides seniors with escorts to go with them while buying groceries and seeing doctors so they can feel safe when running their errands. Our goals with these two programs are to build the trust of our diverse communities and increase public safety for everyone in San Francisco. Just over a month ago, I was tagging along with Sarah Juan and the members of the Street Violence Intervention Program as they were engaging with merchants and customers along this commercial corridor here on Leland Avenue. Right here is a neighborhood where merchants and residents often feel left out and isolated, but when I had a chance to talk with merchants and customers from the barbershops, from the restaurants and the coffee shops, they felt hopeful to see this effort and this partnership, and they asked that we stay consistent, especially the community engagement from CYC and SVIP. The library here has offered its support to those members to use the restroom or to have a place to relax. And I'm sure many of these great places to eat along Leland Avenue have been some of their favorites. It takes a village. And we know how to do this in San Francisco. This really gives me hope because we're making a difference and residents and merchants are feeling the difference. We're committed to addressing xenophobia, injustice, and discrimination through our partnerships and investments, and we are here to support the Visitation Valley community and all of our neighborhoods in San Francisco. And I look forward to continuing this great work with Attorney General Bonta, who knows how critical these issues are to San Francisco. Before I bring the Attorney General up, I just want to recognize him for his efforts in listening to communities across the state. As leaders, it's easy for us to sit in the offices and go about doing our work and to lose a connection with actually what's happening to people every single day on the ground. The fact that Attorney General Bonta is committed to doing not just the roundtable here in San Francisco, but throughout the state in all of the major cities is so key to turning things around and keeping people safe. He's not waiting for the attacks to occur. He is being here, being proactive so that we can make a difference. He's here to listen and to take action, and we will be working together hand in hand on policy changes, on investments, and on whatever needs to be done so no one has to be a victim of a crime in any part of our city or our state. And ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Attorney General Rob Bonta.
Well, thank you all for being here today, and thank you, Mayor Breed, for your very kind remarks. Thank you for your leadership, for seeing and valuing and fighting for all of the beautifully diverse communities right here in San Francisco. As we talked about inside, San Francisco has been a leader, a model, has often and so consistently demonstrated policies and approaches that lift people up and make our communities stronger, and has often been a place where the state of California has scaled up those policies that started right here in San Francisco. So I'm thankful and proud for the opportunity to be here in San Francisco today with Mayor Breed, with Chief Scott, with all of the great community leaders that are here today that you'll hear from momentarily, and to talk about how we move forward. And I was very inspired, and I'm leaving very hopeful and optimistic about our shared future, our common future, and our common commitment to addressing the epidemic of hate crimes, that spike in hate incidents that have impacted so many communities. No community is immune, as we know. We certainly are well aware of the huge increases in anti-API hate violence and hate crimes, but our Black community, our Latino community, our Sikh community, Muslim community, Jewish community, our LGBTQ community, our community, disability community, have all suffered. And our conversation today was a good reminder that we're all in this together, that we're going to move forward together or not at all. And we can move forward when we have conversation, when we listen, when we communicate, as we just did. And so, today is very important to me because this is the launch of 13 of these roundtables that I'll be doing across the state, where we sit in community, where we join a common circle and talk about our challenges and how to move forward together. And it was very appropriate that we started in San Francisco today, given San Francisco's historical, traditional, consistent leadership, and how it has always demonstrated that we celebrate our diversity, and our diversity is our strength. And so I appreciate the opportunity to be here. And over the next few weeks, I'll be in different places all over the state, having similar conversations to uplift best practices, to highlight and illuminate our solutions so that we can prevent and heal as we address this epidemic of hate throughout our state and throughout our nation. And as California's Attorney General, I know many of you have heard this before, I see myself as being the people's attorney. And it's very important for me to see and to value and to protect every community. And for so many of our communities, for too many of our communities, right now, we are in a full-on state of crisis, a full state of emergency when it comes to hate. And, the statistics are alarming, and they're shocking. We know that across California, hate crime events increased 31% across the board last year. Anti-Asian hate crimes in particular increased an alarming 107%. And right here in San Francisco, home to the LGBTQ rights movement, anti-gay hate crimes accounted for over 25% of all hate crimes in the last decade. And of course, statistics can illuminate, and they tell a story, but they don't tell the full story. And so I was very thankful and grateful for the opportunity to hear directly from community leaders, from impacted community members who shared their own stories, personal stories, painful stories about themselves, about the communities that they fight for, and are trying to uplift. And I appreciated that conversation today. And, it's going to take all of us to do this work. And there's no, panacea, there's no cure-all, but there are many ways to make progress, and we heard about many of those ways today, whether it be addressing intergenerational trauma or providing in-language, culturally competent services, being victim-centered, cross-racial healing circles. The list went on and on for how we can make progress. And when we can make progress, we should. When we can take a step forward together, we must. And so we identified many pathways to improve our work going forward. And, in a few weeks, I'll be in my 5th month in office. And in the days since I've sworn in, addressing the epidemic of hate, recognizing that too many of us, for too long in this state, have felt the sting of hate. Too many communities, myself included. This is personal work for me as well. We got to work on day one, taking on the forces of hate. And that's why I've established the Racial Justice Bureau to help tackle the rise of hate. That's why I've issued new guidance and resources to help the public and law enforcement better understand and address hate crimes in California. It's why we've launched the Office of Community Awareness, Response, and Engagement to directly engage with and respond to the needs of communities. And it's why I've pledged to keep working, to do more, to lean in, and to continue this fight. And doing that, working with our local communities, like right here in San Francisco. Because we know that we must protect those hurt by the forces of hate and hold accountable those who perpetrate hate violence against our neighbors. And, it didn't always seem like this, but it's like this now. For many of us, everyday life has come with an additional worry. Whether it's going to the grocery store, picking up your children from school, riding a bus, going for a morning walk. In these moments, too many of us right now are asking ourselves, could I be next? And the stakes are too high to sit back. As mentioned by the mayor, we're only blocks away from where an 89-year-old grandmother was senselessly assaulted at a playground and left to die. And hate and prejudice cannot and will not be tolerated, plain and simple. As your Attorney General, with the full weight of the law and the California Constitution behind me, let me say this. There is no place for hate in California, or anywhere, anytime, period. Full stop, end of story. And across our different cultures and identities, today we came together to affirm this fundamental truth. Across our differences, we are united in making sure that our neighborhoods and our cities are safe and healthy and prosperous for all. Nothing is more important. Let me close by saying this. My parents are social justice champions. My dad marched in Selma during the civil rights movement. Both my parents worked for the United Farm Workers of America. I grew up as a young child. I had the blessing and the privilege of growing up in La Paz, the headquarters for the United Farm Workers movement. From a young age, I learned from my parents while they worked alongside iconic social justice warriors and leaders like Cesar Chavez and Dolores Huerta and Philip Veracruz, that when you see injustice, you need to fight to correct it. And an injustice against one is an injustice against all. So today we reaffirm the us, not the me, that we all are in this together and we will rise together or not at all. And as I take on injustice in many forms as the Attorney General, as the People's Attorney, we are very laser focused on taking on hate incidents and hate crimes. As the People's Attorney, I see you, I'll fight for you, I'll do everything in my power to keep you safe. So thank you so much for the opportunity to be here with you today. Next, we'll be hearing from Saro Juan, Executive Director of Community Youth Center.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Bree. Thank you, Attorney General Bonta. And thank you for all the brothers and sisters behind me that representing different community in San Francisco. Today's roundtable is truly inspiring, but it's also very emotional, especially to me. I think our community, especially our Asian community, are going through a lot of pain. With the surge of the anti-Asian hate last year, even though I've been in this career for 24 years, I felt like no matter how hard our own community trying to survive, to work, it doesn't really matter unless we really work together across different communities. Like Mayor Brice said, if one community doesn't feel safe, all community doesn't feel safe. And today, when we have our own discussion talking about our story, we share a lot of similarities across different communities that we're dealing with: anti-immigrant hate, anti-Muslim hate, anti-transgender hate, anti-LGBTQ hate, all kind of hate that we're facing right now is a crisis. But at the same time, because of this roundtable, that we hear the commitment across the board, not only from the community organizations, but also through our city, our state, how we're going to coordinate together to really move forward to combat this kind of hate and violence, and to how to make sure, ensure safety for our young people, for our seniors, for everyone in San Francisco. I really feel hopeful. We did talk about the challenge that we're facing, including like underreporting, language barriers, victim services, the lack of cultural competency services across the board to support our victim. But we also talk about how important it is to really have violence prevention strategies, how we want to make sure that we don't only respond when there's a crisis, but how we can stay vigilant and stand together across the board, so that we don't always have to rely on GoFundMe, things like that, when something happens, when tragedy happens. So I really feel very hopeful, and I'm really looking forward to work together from the state and also the city level to ensure the safety of all communities. Thank you.
My name is Saro Shahinian. I'm a member of the St. Gregory Armenian Church of San Francisco. Our community was a victim of several hate crimes last year, and it rocked us. And after this meeting, we feel more secure knowing that the Attorney General, the Mayor, the Chief of Police, they've made it crystal clear that hate will not be tolerated at all, on any level, and that there are consequences to it. And division is a source of, it's a disease, and it spreads to society, and we cannot have a civil functioning society with hate. And there will be consequences and zero tolerance, and San Francisco is at the forefront of it, and we need to set an example, not just in our city, but in our state, but for the entire country, that hate will not be tolerated at all. Thank you.
Thank you. Happy to answer any questions if you have any. Statistics in San Francisco.
Thank you. So in 2021, we've had 83 reported hate crimes, but let me say this, that does not tell the whole story. And 59% of those were against Asian people from the AAPI community. And let me just point out one thing: of those 59%, which is 49 hate crimes, 30 of those was committed by one person who is now in custody and has been filed on by our district attorney. So as was said repeatedly by all the speakers, we will not tolerate it. There's no place for this in our city. There's no place for this in our state. And we want to hold those accountable who commit those types of acts. Yeah, so like I said, 30 of the 83 is one person. So those 30 were cleared, and we have solved other crimes. We have not solved others, the ones at the Armenian church. We're still working on that case, and we need the public's help on these things. These are very difficult situations because in addition to the reported hate crimes that meet the statutory prima facie evidence of what constitutes a hate crime, we know that there are other incidents that don't amount to crimes that are happening day in and day out. We need those reported too, and I want to take this as an opportunity to encourage everybody to report these types of incidents, report crime. There are no barriers to reporting crime, so we solve many of them. We don't solve all of them, but we need to work with our community members and the people standing behind me to support this effort to make sure that we don't have these events in our city, and if we do, people are held accountable swiftly with all the might of the law behind it. Thank you. Yeah, we did put out a press release, and I have the information here, so I can get it to you. I don't know his name off the top of my head, but I do have that information, so we can get it to you.
And then for an individual like that, tied to 30 such crimes, what is the likelihood that they stay in jail versus getting back out?
Well, I mean, he's like everybody else. He has the right to a fair trial. He's in jail right now, so that's important as well. But we'll see, what the outcome is. But he is in jail right now. Okay, thank you.
So I want to ask, people usually mention hate crime is very difficult to define from the lawsuit part, but the hate behaviors still happen. So what kind of behavior or action you want to take with this?
Well, thank you for your question. The question is about hate crimes versus hate incidents and what qualifies as a hate crime versus something that might still be a hate-based incident, which does not necessarily qualify as a hate crime. And let me just start by talking about hate crimes. There are specific definitions under the law, and the facts must meet the threshold of that law to qualify as a hate crime. And I encourage us to use our hate crime statutes throughout the state of California. That's what they're there for. That's a tool that we have to do what Chief Scott was and some of our community leaders were talking about earlier, which is to be swift and clear and consistent in our response to hate crimes, to make sure that people know that there is no room for hate, not here, not anywhere, not now, not ever. So that's what they're there for, and they do have certain qualifying elements and requirements. As far as hate incidents that don't qualify as actual hate crimes, I know there's debate, dialogue, and discussion right now about maybe potentially changing some of those definitions and providing accountability and consequences for what might not be a hate crime under current definitions, but might still be a hate-based incident. So I think those are ongoing dialogues and debates. And as tools, if they come online, those should be utilized as well. I think it's incumbent upon all of us to work together to address hate in all its forms. And there's multiple dimensions to this. We need to make sure that we're focusing in on prevention as well, preventing the hate incident or the hate crime from occurring in the first place. And there's been some great work being done right here in San Francisco with respect to their escort program, having some of our seniors who might be vulnerable have support and accompaniment so that a hate crime could be prevented from happening in the first place, so that they can be supported and be free of any hate incident or hate violence. Our victims also need to be supported as well with victim-centered services, so critical and so important. And even if they are the victim of a hate incident as opposed to a hate crime, they're deserving of support and healing and trauma-informed care. So I think that's an ongoing debate right now about what else we can do to address non-hate crime, hate incidents. But I think, it's incumbent upon us to use all the tools in the toolbox to make sure every community knows that we're here to support them, to fight for them, and that hate is unacceptable, period, end of story. Thank you.
Yes, they did. No, it does not.
And I'm wondering, in light of talking about hate crimes and a number of them here in this city, this response to that assessment in light of what we're talking about here.
Yeah, I'm happy to respond to that. I mean, here's the thing. San Francisco is a major city. It's a city that has challenges of a major city. And what we have consistently tried to do is to put policies and investments in place that help to combat those challenges. But that should not take away from how beautiful this city is, how amazing it is, how diverse it is. When people come to this city and they see these amazing views of the Golden Gate Bridge or the Lombard Street or the Palace of Fine Arts, and they go to these very unique neighborhoods and they see these really beautiful homes, and look at this library even is a very unique looking library with palm trees. You feel good when you walk through the door. There's a lot of beauty, but also within that beauty, there's a lot of diversity. And here in San Francisco, what we do is we talk about that diversity as a strength of our city. How amazing it is that you could be in Visitation Valley and then you can just go right over the hill and be in the Bayview Hunters Point community. You can head to Chinatown. You can go to Little Italy. You can go to the Fillmore. You can go to all these different neighborhoods and have a completely different experience. So I think that San Francisco, we should be celebrating and highlighting the beauty, the uniqueness, the excitement of our city, although as a major city, as one of the most densest cities in the country, we are not immune from challenges, but it doesn't mean that we don't continue to combat those challenges. We address those challenges, but more importantly, that should not take away from the beauty of this city and how amazing it is. Thank you all so much for joining us.